You're looking to understand complex topics, but, without getting totally lost in just tons of information, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
pretty much what we try to do here. And today we're diving deep into the figure of Krishna.
Hmm.
Not just through, the popular legends everyone knows, but
Yeah.
by looking really closely at a specific source.
Exactly. We're focusing on a YouTube transcript. It's a lecture, actually part 2 of a series by Acharya Agnivrat.
Okay.
And in this lecture, he really digs into who Krishna was, mostly based on the epic Mahabharata.
Right.
And he contrasts that view with some of the other stories that are more widely circulated.
So our goal here isn't really to just recount every single tale about Krishna.
No, not at all.
It's more like we want to get a solid grasp of his core character, his impact,
Right.
by focusing on how these really authoritative figures back then saw him.
Yeah, the contemporaries?
Think of it like a direct route to understanding a more maybe grounded perspective on Krishna.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating, right from the start, is how the lecturer sets up this contrast
Okay.
between the common image of Krishna, often full of stories about childhood pranks and things like
Yeah,
that.
the butter thief stories and such.
Right. And the very different portrayal we actually find within the Mahabharata itself.
And the lecturer is, well, he's quite direct about his view on those childhood pranks narratives, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He calls them distorted, even shameful, and suggests they can actually harm the understanding of Vedic Sanatan Dharma.
Wow, that's a pretty strong stance to take.
It is. And he points out that critics, he mentions Christian, Muslim, left-wing critics have used these very stories. So he urges us, the listener, to think carefully about where these criticisms are coming from and maybe how valid they actually are.
Yeah, it makes you stop and think about the layers of interpretation that have built up around Krishna over
Yeah.
centuries. He also makes this really interesting point using a Hindi proverb on har burwan ke hat shikne pat.
Right, the promising sapling shows early signs.
Exactly, which basically means, early signs point to future potential. His logic seems to be if Krishna's early life was really as maybe negatively portrayed as some stories suggest,
Yeah.
how could he then have risen to become this incredibly prominent and respected figure later on? It's a compelling question, really.
It absolutely is. And the lecturer, he expresses this concern that the Krishna we know from the Bhagavad Gita,
The teacher, the philosopher.
yes, that Krishna and even his wife Rukmini, they often get overshadowed by these other, maybe less significant narratives.
Okay.
And this really highlights why he keeps pointing back to the Mahabharata as the sort of more reliable account for understanding Krishna.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit more. This focus on the Mahabharata. The lecturer clearly sees this epic as the key source.
Mm-hmm. The primary source.
And it's crucial to remember who wrote it, right? Maharishi Vedvyasa.
Vyasa is absolutely central here. I mean, he didn't just author the Mahabharata, which of course contains the Bhagavad Gita,
Right.
but he himself was this highly revered sage, a yogi. The lecturer mentions his commentaries on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras
Wow.
and his authorship of the Brahma Sutras, which is basically the foundation of Vedanta philosophy.
So that establishes his credibility pretty firmly. Incredible authority, profound understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when Vyasa speaks about Krishna, it carries immense weight.
And it's through Vyasa's words then in the Mahabharata that we get these 3 very specific, very powerful titles used exclusively for Krishna.
Yes,
That's
key, exclusively.
The first one is Yogeshwar. What does that tell us? How did Vyasa see him through that title?
Well, Yogeshwar translates pretty directly to Lord of Yoga.
Okay.
The lecturer explains this signifies complete mastery over yoga, reaching a state called Jivan Mukta.
Jivan Mukta, liberated while living.
Exactly, the stage just before final liberation, or moksha. And what's really interesting here is the contrast he draws with some modern views,
Yeah.
where people might dismiss Krishna, saying he wasn't a complete yogi. But here you have Vyasa himself, this towering yogi,
Right.
clearly recognizing Krishna's supreme yogic abilities. So Vyasa is painting a picture of Krishna as, the ultimate master of self.
That's a powerful image. Okay, the second epithet, Achyut. Now this one feels particularly relevant to some of the debates around Krishna's actions, doesn't it?
It really does. Achyut means one who never deviates from the path of Dharma and the Vedas.
Never deviates. Okay.
Then the lecturer directly addresses this concept of Krishnaniti, which sometimes gets associated with strategy, maybe even cunning or deceit.
Yeah, I've heard that interpretation.
But he strongly argues that Krishna always acted in accordance with Vedic Dharma. He stresses that misunderstandings often come from not fully grasping the principles.
Like ahimsa,
Yeah.
nonviolence.
Ahimsa, yes, and satya, truth. But within their specific contexts, it's nuanced.
He even mentions, didn't he, some book that made a bizarre comparison linking Krishna needy to how some Christian nations historically operated, implying deception.
Yes. And the lecturer just vehemently rejects this comparison.
Yeah.
He emphasizes again and again, Krishna's actions were always within the framework of Vedic ethics, as understood then.
So when we hear Krishna needy, the lecturer's point is that the common, maybe simplistic interpretations miss this deeper ethical rationale rooted in Vedic Dharma.
That's absolutely the core of his argument.
Yeah.
And Vyasa, by calling Krishna Achyut, is essentially vouching for his unwavering righteousness. It's a powerful endorsement from a master of Dharma.
Unwavering righteousness, got it. And the third key epithet from Vyasa is Vishwajit. That sounds, well, powerful. Conqueror of the world.
Does sound grand, doesn't it? Vishwajit signifies someone who was never defeated in battle.
Okay, undefeated.
But the lecturer kind of broadens this out. He highlights Krishna's excellence across many different domains.
Not just fighting.
No. His birth itself, his Brahm Gyan, that deep knowledge of the ultimate reality. His Kshatriya Dharma, obviously, as a warrior. But even his Vaishya Karma, things like skills in trade and knowledge. He specifically mentions his unparalleled expertise in Ashwavidya.
Ashwavidya, horsemanship.
Exactly, horsemanship.
Yeah.
So it's
What the
not
heck
just
is it?
about military victories. It's about this, like, comprehensive mastery over many fields.
Wow. So taken together, what Vyasa is giving us is a picture of Krishna as the ultimate master of self. Yogeshwar, totally unwavering in his principles, Achyut, and, well, universally victorious or masterful, Vishwajit.
Precisely. A figure of immense inner and outer strength, according to one of the most respected sages imaginable.
Okay, so that's Vyasa's perspective, hugely authoritative. Now, the lecture also touches on the meaning of Bhagavan. How does that title fit in?
Right, Bhagavan. The lecture explains, it describes someone who possesses these exceptional qualities, things like wealth, detachment, asceticism, wisdom, renunciation, a whole package of virtues.
Okay.
And while Bhagavan can refer to the ultimate creator,
It's also used differently.
yes, it's also used as a high honorific for incredibly accomplished individuals. So when Krishna is called Bhagavan, it's acknowledging his extraordinary nature, his virtues, his, well, greatness as a being.
Got it. So we have these powerful figures like Vyasa giving these major titles, but what about, how people actually interacted with him? The lecture gets into that incident with Shishupala's criticism. What's the key thing to take away from that story?
What's really striking about Shishupala, and remember, he had intense animosity towards Krishna, really hated him,
Yeah.
is what he didn't accuse him of, despite all the insults he hurled during that Rajasuya Yajna.
What didn't he say?
According to the lecture, Shishupala never once called Krishna a better thief, never called him a womanizer. None of those accusations of immoral behavior that pop up in the later Puranic stories.
That's actually a really powerful point. The things he didn't say.
It is. The lecture even makes this provocative comment that Krishna himself might have, used his Sudarshan chakra against modern devotees who glorify these Ranchad aspects,
Right.
the one who supposedly flees the battlefield,
Right.
or Makan Chor, the butter thief.
Right.
It really underscores the lecture's perspective on how Krishna's image has been, perhaps, altered over time.
So the nature of the criticism itself is significant. What did Shishupala accuse him of then, according to the lecture?
Well, when Bhishma Pitama responded, the lecturer clarifies Shishupala's actual accusations. There were things like killing Kansa,
Okay.
being a woman killer, which was a reference to Putana,
Ah, right.
accusing him of not being a king, just a cowherd, things like that. They're quite different from the kinds of almost affectionate abuses some devotees might use today in the name of bhakti,
Very different focus. Okay, so Shukala makes his accusations, and then we get Bhishma Pitama's powerful defense of Krishna. First off, who was Bhishma in this context? Why is his testimony so important?
Bhishma Pitama was, well, arguably the elder statesman, the eldest, wisest, most respected figure in that whole assembly.
The Grand Patriarch.
Exactly. A towering authority. His words carried immense weight, and he flatly stated that no king there could possibly defeat Krishna's tejas.
Tejas. His spiritual power, radiance.
Yeah, his spiritual power, his aura, his radiance. He says no one could stand against it in battle, which directly backs up that Vishwajit title, Vyasa used.
Undefeated. Okay. And Bhishma's praise goes even further, right? It gets almost cosmic.
It really does.
Yeah.
He says Krishna is worthy of worship, not just by everyone present in that hall, but by all three worlds, even beings in celestial realms, distant worlds. The lecture mentions those who travel in the sky, living in other distant worlds.
Wow. Worthy of worship for all three worlds.
Yeah.
That really elevates Krishna beyond just a human hero. That's universal significance.
It's a massive statement. And the lecturer highlights that Bhishma bases this on personal experience. He talks about repeatedly hearing about Krishna's yash, his glory.
His Shaurya valor and Vijay victory right from the time Krishna was born. Bhishma is essentially saying, look, I've watched everyone here, I know their qualities, and based on all that,
Krishna stands out.
Krishna stands out. He's vouching for him based on direct, extensive observation.
And then Bhishma just lists this incredible range of virtues, doesn't he? It's
But
almost overwhelming.
it really is. Mastery of Vedas and Vedingas, deep knowledge of Vedic science, spirituality, exceptional skill, strength, unparalleled in the human realm, he says,
Wow.
plus excellence in charity, given scriptural knowledge, valor and modesty, etiquette, fame, intelligence, superior intellect, humility, gentleness, beauty, splendums, Buddha, episode, and patience. It's
But Lord,
comprehensive.
that is an astonishing list. It paints a picture of someone truly exceptional in almost every conceivable way.
And then, crucially, Bhishma doesn't just list qualities. He identifies Krishna in relational terms. He calls him their Ritwik,
They're priests.
priest, yes, and their guru, teacher, their acharya, preceptor, their raja, king, and even their prima mitra,
Beloved friend.
beloved friend. These multiple roles really underscore the profound, multifaceted impact Krishna had on the most respected people around him.
And the lecturer also brings up the personal connection, right? Bhishma was Arjuna's granduncle, and Arjuna was Krishna's brother-in-law and close friend.
Exactly. That personal tie, that family connection, it adds another layer of weight to Bhishma's praise. It's not just some detached, objective assessment.
It suggests real, deep-seated respect and admiration.
Precisely. Now, the lecturer makes a really key point about understanding the context of all this praise from Bhishma.
Right. He emphasizes that these qualities are significant because Krishna is being recognized primarily as an exceptional human being, or maybe a being within a certain category, not just as the ultimate creator god. Why is that distinction important?
Because, well, if you're just praising the absolute creator of the universe, saying he's strong or wise, it doesn't mean the same thing, does it?
No, I guess not. It's expected.
Exactly. The lecturer emphasizes that even among this incredible gathering of other great figures, you had Vyasa there, Bhishma himself, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Vidura, other rishis.
A hall full of legends.
Right. Even among them, Krishna was chosen as the chief guest, the one most worthy of first honor. Because of his unique distinction, his Vishisht Kashav, he stood out even in that remarkable company based on these, human level or being level excellences.
He wasn't just great, he was uniquely distinguished among the groups.
That's the point the lecturer drives home.
Okay. And then the lecture brings in yet another highly influential figure, Maharishi Dayana Saraswati. What was his view on Krishna?
Maharishi Dayanand, a major figure in the Arya Samaj movement, a huge reformer, he stated apparently quite clearly that from Krishna's birth to his death, there's nothing negative, nothing bad recorded about him in the Mahabharata.
Nothing negative at all.
According to Dayanand, yes. And that Krishna's character is like that of an apta purush,
Appurush, meaning?
a trustworthy person, an authority figure whose word and actions you can rely on.
That's a significant endorsement, especially coming from Dayanand.
Hugely significant.
Yes.
The lecturer emphasizes that without this strong backing from Maharishi Dayanand, the Arya Samaj movement might have just, disregarded Krishna entirely.
Wow. So Dayanand's view was crucial for Krishna's place within that tradition.
It seems so. And yet, the lecturer points out, even with this powerful endorsement, some scholars still question Krishna's spiritual status, which just highlights, again, the ongoing complexity and the different ways people interpret this figure, even with strong textual evidence.
It's never simple, is it? Okay, so bringing all these threads together, the Mahabharata text, Vyasa's titles, Shishupala's specific and omitted criticisms, Bhishma's powerful testimony, Dayanand's endorsement, what's the lecture's final conclusion about Krishna's identity based on this source?
His conclusion, drawing from all this, is pretty clear. Krishna was the best among the Brahmins and Kshatriyas of his era. He was the central hero of the Mahabharata epic. He was the one who gave the world the Bhagavad Gita. And ultimately, he was a worthy ideal, someone whose character deserves our deep respect and reverence. That's the picture painted by these key figures and the primary text.
Okay, so to kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, what we've seen guided by Acharya Agnivrat's lecture is how the Mahabharata, and especially the perspectives of these incredibly respected figures like Vyasa and Bhishma,
Yeah.
they present Krishna as this remarkably accomplished, morally upright, universally respected individual.
That's the core image.
And this offers a really significant contrast to some of the, later, maybe more embellished or popularized narratives that focus on different aspects.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating here, I think, for you listening, is to reflect on how these different interpretations of major historical or religious figures actually emerge and evolve over time.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about why certain stories catch on and endure, while others are maybe reevaluated, challenged, or even kind of forgotten by some.
It's a whole process of cultural memory and interpretation. Okay, so here's maybe a final thought for you to chew on after this discussion.
Go on.
If those who lived closest to Krishna, the direct witnesses, the most respected contemporaries like Vyasa and Bhishma, if they consistently highlighted his profound yogic power, his unwavering commitment to Dharma, and the universal respect he commanded, how does that understanding potentially reshape your perspective on his lasting legacy and maybe also on the complexities of how we read and interpret these ancient, powerful texts?
That's a great question to ponder. How does focusing on the earliest layers change the overall picture? Definitely something worth thinking about.